Going to look at how we can apply what we've learned so far in the strokes to the rear end of the dog here. And it's very important to open up the hamstrings, the lumbar fascia, which is back here, the gluteals, the quadriceps, and into the gastrocnemius, the calf muscle on a person down in here. We want this leg to be able to just move back and forth. So into protraction and retraction as easily as possible. The rear leg propels the center of mass by acting as an inverted pendulum. So if this point here, if the acetabulum or the hip socket were the fixed point and the leg were penduluming like this, we'd say that the foot was the end of the pendulum. But what actually happens is that the foot becomes the fixed point in locomotion, and then this point is moved forward, and that's a pendulum that's upside down, so an inverted pendulum. It's only inverted if you assume that this would have been the fixed point, I guess. So let's take a look at the application of the strokes we've learned for this. I like to work in the rear of the dog in two separate sessions. So I like to work the outside, if you will, the lateral aspects, the hamstrings, the gluteals, the lumbar fascia, all the quadriceps. And then I like to work the inside, so we would flip the dog over and we work the inside of the legs, all of the adductors, the attachment of the psoas into the femur, the top of the femur, and the lesser trochanter. And so usually just start off tissue testing. And here I'm just going to use a long stroke. Open up this fascia, this superficial fascia, in this whole compartment. Now we've done our range of motion testing, so we could have established some goals for our work here. Find my bony landmarks. Here's the point of the buttocks, tuber ischii, into the hamstrings here. He's not overly bad in his hamstrings, primarily because he hasn't been pushing through much with this. You know, between the roached back, which I think is caused by a scar, rather than his leg coming forward, he hasn't been able to elongate in the spine, this rib restriction, and so he brings his rear end around himself, and you see that in the movement assessment portion of the video. These long strokes are really good for these muscles back here. Excellent. We've got to remember to work the other side. So we work one side and then flip the dog over and work the other side. In the video, we've got to remember to do that. We bring him into, not really even, we can flex or bring him into extension and still this lateral quadricep is pretty hypertonic. So we just sink in and follow. movement of the fish. There we go. That was the separation as the myofascia of two muscles that were adhered together came apart, and there it is again. So we just get some delineation in here using this. From a pressure point of view, if you want to know how much pressure I'm using, which really doesn't matter, it's probably enough to hold up a quarter or two, not that much. Wait for this tendon to open. There we go. Into the gastroc. Here's the gastroc. The medial part is pretty adhered to itself. So my fingers underneath are working like this. Pretty hot, huh? Now I'm just taking it between my two, almost a pincer movement, but it's still one of the, what I would call a stroke. Not a cross fiber type movement, no circles. Yeah. The hamstrings come up into this lumbar fascia. When I say his or not, there's not a lot happening here. Moved him around so we can see how to work with this leg while he's laying on the other side. What I'm going to do is just reach up in here and work with the psoas muscle as it comes down into this lesser trochanter of the femur. And I've asked the film crew to come over and make sure his head doesn't move. We want to go very, very slow in this area, very gently. We want to feel for any pulsations, a blood vessel, an artery underneath our fingertips. We don't want to be pushing on those. Yeah. And while I'm up here, so I'm just doing a compression. So if you see my thumb, I'm just doing a compression on the psoas at the trochanter. And then I'm going to see what's happening with these adductors and medial hamstrings. Now, his medial hamstring, the semimembranosus, is pretty fibrotic. I couldn't feel this on the other side from the lateral aspect, but I can feel it now. And a stroke. And come into the medial portion of the gastroc and the flexors here. And I'm just going to engage this barrier with a compression. Just ask this tissue to go a little bit more lateral. The important thing to me about this work is take your time, take the time to sink in, and then just follow the tissue in small strokes And if the small stroke that you're trying to make is not being accepted, then just try a different angle. If it's an energetically efficient recommendation that you're making to the body, then it's going to be accepted. So just these medial quadriceps here. The patella is underneath my middle finger, now my ring finger. Good.